10 years ago today, and hopefully this drops on November 13th, Logic released his second album, which will go on to be probably his most recognizable project in his entire discography. And that album is The Incredible True Story. This album for me is filled with so much nostalgia because honestly, it's the album that I connected to with the most looking back, and probably the most I connect with in terms of his discography today. Whenever I'm on long car rides, or I just need some time to think to myself, or I just want to relive my teenage years, I throw this project on. For some reason, it's just incredibly comforting for me. While admittedly, I heard this album a year afterwards, I heard it around 2016, I had still heard a plethora of songs that came from this project way beforehand, like I Am the Greatest, or Fade Away, or like Whoa, because every single gaming YouTuber had one of those songs as their gaming intro. But before I start rambling on way too much, let's talk about this album in terms of how it was created, what went into this project, why it resonated so much, not only just with me, but with the fan base in general, and how it essentially propelled Logic into the pseudo-mainstream rap space. So, without further ado, and man, I had been waiting, I would say probably a year to say this. This is the Retrospective series.
I live in the moment.
Man, I haven't said that in a long time. If you're one of my day ones, then you would know that on this channel, I did retrospectives, and clearly, I still do. I just haven't done one in a very long time. In fact, my first one was on Logic and his Under Pressure album. That was my first ever real video on this channel. So if you want to go check that out, you can go look at that. It's on my page right now. I have a whole playlist with all of my retrospectives there. But now we can jump right into the video. The Incredible True Story dropped on November 13th, 2015 under Def Jam. It was Logic's second project, piggybacking off of his debut album Under Pressure, which had dropped a little over a year prior. This album, Logic wanted to dive deep into his love for space, which hilariously would be a running trend for a lot of other mediums. Anyway, Logic's Under Pressure included a lot of little skits at the end of some of the tracks by a voice known as Thalia. Thalia would give little fun facts about the project, the song, or Logic himself. He would build off of her and make her a part of a bigger storyline on this album. The Incredible True Story was a concept album that was based around the idea that the Earth we know was becoming essentially inhabitable, or more specifically, the city of Babel, a fictional utopian city, had become inhabitable as millions of people were dying due to this chemical in this meat and the water, and Earth has sent out these two guys to go explore the remaining humans' next home, which they dubbed Paradise. Honestly, it's a lot deeper than that. Like, it was Japan and the US had merged, and China and Russia were making nuclear bombs or something, and it's a whole lot of stuff. A broken treaty was it's a lot. So I'm not gonna lie, check out the Logic fandom wiki to get the full scoop, but that's basically the premise of what happens. The story follows Captain Quentin Williams, voiced by every teenager's and adult's favorite voice actor, Steve Bloom, and William Kai, voiced by Kevin Randolph, as they venture off into space, searching for the planet Paradise. We learn a lot of this from the skits and the eventual book that came out about the fictional story of this album. The role that this music plays is significant because remember how I said Thalia was giving out fun facts? That's because Quentin was listening to this album as he deems it as more of like lost archives. And did I mention this is all in the future? This is all in the future, by the way. 2023 to be exact, which technically isn't the future no more, but you get what I'm saying. In this story, Quentin was listening to Under Pressure as he was making his way over to the ship with Kai, and the story picks up with the both of them listening to, and I'm just gonna say this because the title was way too long at this point, so from now on I'll be referring to The Incredible True Story as tits. The skits on this album range from actual storytelling dialogue to funny spots like Kai asking to speak the Big Sean out of everybody in human history. Yes, that includes Jesus himself, to a skit basically telling everybody how Logic solves Rubik's Cubes for sex. The album sounds cinematic, from the voice acting, mixing, sound effects, and the album was executively produced by Logic's main guy, Six. And he would lead the team while others like Stephen Ponce, Sir Dylan, Syke Sense, Oz, and DJ Dahi also contributed to other songs as well. But with that being said, let's get into the actual music. For this section, I'm going to go song by song, quick facts about them, and then sharing my personal review of these songs, starting with Contact. Contact is essentially the title track song, or the opening credits music to a big cinematic movie, as it transitions into the beginning of the story. The track is first of many Kanye influences sprinkled, as it samples Kanye's Amazing. As it transitions though, this is where Quentin enters the ship where Kai is, and that's where they do this whole back and forth of, oh, what you know about Logic, what you do, and then the real album begins with Fade Away. Fade Away was a track produced by Logic, which was his final single off of this album, releasing exactly 1 week before this album had dropped on November 5th, 2015. And this song to this day is still one of my favorite Logic songs of all time, and I believe it is one of the Logic songs that perfectly encapsulates who he is as not only a rapper, but as a person as well. Fast-paced flow, bars, skits, space, nerd. This is the entire Logic package that we would get for the rest of his career. This is who he is on this track. A super mega nerd that loves Star Wars, anime, and hip hop. While the song is upbeat and fun, it's a track that really talks about mortality and understanding that we are all gonna go someday. So do something meaningful, or try to do something meaningful before you leave. This song will never not be good to me. I gotta be honest with you. And it holds up really well. I just do wish it didn't have this skit at the end, because for me personally, yes, me personally, it kills the replay value for me just a little bit. In the skit though, they talk about upgrading Thalia, so now she actually holds conversation, and that's when we get the, Big Sean Jesus joke, ha 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 ha. But the idea of upgrade leads directly into the next track. Upgrade is the first of many spacey tracks on this album. This song is essentially talking about the success Logic has seen coming off of his last project, from the money to material things, women, etc. And there's nothing really more to it. It's very laid back, very chill, until we get to the next actual song on the album, Like Whoa. Like Whoa was another upbeat song with the flute that never leaves your brain whenever you hear the title. It's the second single to the album, released on October 14th, about a month before the album drops. Like Upgrade, it's another track where Logic is talking about his rise in hip hop, and he's essentially taking it all in. Like, what? I hate it. Why did I even write that? But you know what he means. He's basically saying like, yo, this is crazy that I'm here, type of thing. It's a song that I think is basically flawless, and I honestly have zero gripes about it. But the next track takes it to a whole nother level. Young Jesus was the first single released on September 15th, 2015. And to this day, it definitely is in my top 3 favorite songs off of this project, and maybe top 10 Logic songs in general, in my opinion. This track, from top to bottom, honestly, is probably one of the best rap songs that come out in 2015, period. This song is a perfect example of what passing the rock back and forth on a track actually looks like. For another example, NBA Youngboy with Lil Yachty and Youngboy is another example of passing the rock back and forth on a track. Logic brings his youthful, charismatic energy to the track, while Big Lembo brings a more grittier, bigger, aggressive side to the track. It's honestly just a fun song. It's nothing to really deep dive about or try to find the hidden message or hidden meaning. However, I will say my only gripe with this song though is that Big Lembo, I'm pretty sure, is just fully Indian. And while this song is fire and his verses are fire, him saying the N-word, I don't know, big homie. I'm just saying, I don't know if Logic is allowed to give you. Hey, but we're not gonna get into that. Anyway, this album takes a tone shift as we get to what basically is the interlude, which is intermission. Man, I gotta sit back for this one, y'all. Intermission is probably my favorite Logic song of all time. And I know I just got off the back of saying Young Jesus is one of my favorite Logic songs of all time. I think you'll get a clear pattern here on why this is probably my favorite Logic album. This song is so chill, so laid back, so relaxing, and Lucy Rose, she plays her role so perfectly. She sounds absolutely beautiful on this track. The track samples Nas's famous Life's a Bitch off of his Illmatic album. The song plays on the concept of the album while also being a metaphor for the journey he is taking in real life, which is his rap career. He talks about how he hasn't been home, talking about how he writes to his friend that's in jail and how that could have been him if he didn't stay focused and stay on the sidewalk and not in the street. It's a track about not forgetting where you're from and how important and crucial his journey is, not only for him, but for those he cares about as well. He's the hope. He's the one that can show people that there is more to life than just negativity, streets, drugs, violence. It's a track that to this day, I still get emotional listening to it sometimes. It just right in the sternum, just right in the left sternum. As the track concludes, it ends with the interview with a child talking about, the galaxy, and he mentions the planet Paradise. Like I said at the top, this track is essentially the meaning of the title of the entire album, and how yes, the album is about a journey through space to find paradise, but it's also about Logic traveling through life trying to find his paradise and understanding that he has to leave metaphorically his world behind to go find a new one, but never forgetting where he came from. But unfortunately, the world that he comes from, the world that Quentin and Kai come from, just isn't for them anymore, and it only breeds death and destruction. And essentially, rap is his Aquarius 3. I'm the Greatest is a song that I could not escape in 2015 and 2016. It felt like every single gaming YouTuber back then that I was watching had this song as their intro, whether it was Madden Mobile, 2K. It felt like every single one of y'all had I Am the Greatest as y'all intro. And you know what's crazy about this though? Is that while this was one of my first songs off of this album that I was introduced to by Logic, in fact one of the first songs I was introduced to Logic in general, it's probably my least favorite off of this album, and maybe probably one of my least favorite all time in general. Not to say that it's a bad track per se, the track samples Muhammad Ali's album. Yes, I know Muhammad Ali had an album. Why would he not have an album if you know Muhammad Ali? I Am the Greatest. It's a song that is just a giant middle finger to all his haters, more or less, and how they nitpick every single thing that he does. And this will become a recurring theme throughout the project and sadly throughout his career as well. Lord Willin' is another track that over time I've never really loved. It's still decent, I like it, but it just doesn't present a lot of replay value for me either. Lord Willin' is the track where he's essentially thanking God for where he is now, and he's hoping that he can stay on this trajectory going forward. There really isn't much else to say or talk about with this track, but there is a lot to talk about for this next one. City of Stars is the song that honestly battles as one of my favorites, if not my favorite, off of this project, along with Intermission. This song is essentially Logic making his best version of what Kanye West would sound like if Logic did it. Especially when you consider that he sampled Last Call and Heard Him Say on this song, and the song itself sounds a lot like Flashing Lights. What's crazy is that this is kind of used as a knock against Logic, specifically with this song, and to me, on one hand, I get it. It's essentially copying someone else's bag, but on the other hand, Kanye was arguably in his peak from 2004 to 2015, so to make a song mimicking somebody in their prime, and I would say nailing it to a T, and it being phenomenal on top of that, I just can't justify the hate at that point. Now, the point of this song is essentially a breakup song with hip hop or hip hop's culture. It's actually a song with a message that still plays today for the most part, because there's actually some other undertones in there as well. But the main point that he's trying to drive home is that hip hop hates new things. Meaning, whenever there is a new generation of rappers coming in, the gatekeepers will find a way to dismiss it and say it's not real rap or they aren't good enough to be considered rappers. Especially around this time where the convo like that was at an all-time high, like Drake, Future, and Migos, because they were dominating the charts and their material and what they were rapping about wasn't necessarily considered real rap material because they weren't seen as lyricists or weren't lyricists at all. They talked about drugs, guns, violence, money, being sad, and a bunch of other things. And Logic on this track basically points out the hypocrisy in all of that, saying, bro, Big and Pac used to rap about the same things. It was just boom bap. And hypocrisy would be a ongoing thing that happens in this hip hop community, especially today. And I could go on a really, really long rant. In fact, I have multiple videos talking about this. In fact, I have multiple TikToks now talking about this. So let's just talk about why this point coming from Logic feels a little weird. You want to know why Logic feels this way? Well, simply putting it, and I mean this with no disrespect, his race has a lot to do with it. You see, his biracialness, if that's a word, kept the gatekeepers from fully embracing him, and you would see him struggle with this for years when it comes to acceptance. Because, to break it down in layman's terms, white people see him as black, black people see him as white. Therefore, nobody sees him for who he actually is, and he can't be accepted by anybody because white people don't really like black people and black people don't really like white people, and now he feels like he's stuck in the middle, and you get the picture, the tragic mulatto case. And so for Logic, he feels like hip-hop has never fully and honestly still never fully accepted him because of the fact that he is part white and nerdy. Even though rappers in the 80s, 90s, and 2000s were known for being nerdy like Wu-Tang and Outkast, but the key difference was they felt familiar because they were easily recognizable as black, unlike Logic, unfortunately. And we would definitely not get any more songs talking about this exact issue. Stainless featuring Drea is another tone shifter where this track is more upbeat and fun and definitely one of my personal favorites. And I mean, dog, that beat is just hard. Drea absolutely snapped on her verse or bridge, I don't know. It was short, but it was heat. Stainless is a song basically dissing nepo babies and white privileged kids who had easy lives, which is ironic when you consider who Logic's fan base is. He talks about how he didn't have none of that growing up, how there was nobody to get him out of a jam or to use daddy's credit card whenever they want. This track is just a piggyback off of City of Stars, unfortunately, but also Under Pressure, where he talks about his upbringing a lot. In earlier tracks, this point was used as more of like a reference or a metaphor. But in these last two tracks, it feels a little different. This track, along with City of Stars, would start the trend of where Logic will feel like he continuously has to prove himself to everyone, to be like, look guys, I came from the hood, my dad sold drugs, my brother has guns, yada this, yada that. So while on this album it doesn't feel that bad, it just feels like an extension of Under Pressure, but with the blue tint or the vibe of tits that it's trying to go for. Man, that sounds even crazy to say. Ultimately, in retrospect, it would just be another song where Logic is just trying to prove himself to hip-hop. So while at the time it's a really good song and a really good standalone song and it fits the album, what he's trying to portray, overall when we look back at his career, it's just another song of him trying to prove to everybody how black, I guess, and how hip-hop he is, which is literally the same thing that he would critique on the previous track about how hip-hop doesn't accept him for who he is. To cut him some slack, however, it's also a song talking about being true to yourself and not letting anybody stain your values or image. But again, in retrospect, this would be a recurring message that he would talk about in tracks later down the line. So Yeah. Paradise would be, I think, my first time hearing Logic's real take on Erykah Badu and Outkast, as they were a huge influence on this track. It's more laid back, has more of a neo soul vibe, especially in the first half, but with Logic tapping into an Andre 3 style of rapping. But when we get into the lyrics, unfortunately, it's another track of him talking about his skin color and his hood upbringing. Again, I'm not trying to say this is a bad thing, but if we just speak retrospectively as a Logic fan, this type of stuff is all over the project and will be littered throughout many projects after this. The meaning of this track, though, is just to talk about how your environment doesn't necessarily dictate your outcome. You do. You have to find your own paradise and trust your intuition and trust your gut on what you feel like is best for you. Like, for example, he talks about how many people regret going to college and are having to pay off huge amounts of student debt because they were told college is the only way to make it and succeed in life. A message that really isn't preached anymore today because that's simply not true. Everyone's journey to paradise is different, and that's for a reason. So one person's idea of paradise doesn't mean that's your personal idea of paradise. While it may have sounded like I was speaking negatively on the song, I wasn't. I actually really love this song. And Logic's verse on the beat switch is just absolutely phenomenal. Now, interesting fact about this song, Logic says in this verse how this song was written before the first album was even made. And I'm assuming he's talking about the first half. He talks in interviews about how he has writing journals, and this song, along with the concept for this album and the overall story, was all written well in advance before the first album was even finalized. Never Been is another Kanye influenced track, giving the vibes of Through the Wire and Heard Him Say, while also sampling I Wonder. This track is honestly a self-motivating track that we will see him do time and time again, where he's basically telling himself to stay focused and stay on track. Along with that, this track is essentially telling the world to keep chasing your dreams. But chasing your dreams is gonna be hard. It's the harder path, but that's why you should do it. You shouldn't do something because it's easy. You should do it because it's hard, and staying true to yourself and not falling for the easier thing makes it 10 times harder. For me, this track hits 10 times harder than when I was in high school. Because now that I'm at that point where Logic is talking about on this track, I definitely feel it. I struggle with the idea of basically conforming and wanting to go get a job, even though in this climate in 2025 the job market is absolutely horrible. Or do I stay on the path that I want to stay on, knowing that it's going to be 10 times harder, which is this right here, and I think it's pretty obvious what I'm choosing right now. It's essentially the old dreams deferred poem. Do I defer my dreams, work hard, and go live check to check and regret my decision? Or do I stay down and really follow my passion? That's the question that is being asked on this track. And Logic is telling you, hey, chase your dreams. Run It is a song where Logic is telling everyone to pay him his just due. Whether it's the label paying him his money, the media publications paying him through good reviews and publicity, or the fans / gatekeepers paying him in respect. But eventually, everyone will have to pay him what's due. And this track would lead us right into the last cutscene, Lucidity. The reason why I'm mentioning Lucidity is because it transitions into the final track, the title track. The Incredible True Story is essentially the ending credits song. You know how Marvel movies or, movies back in the early 2000s where the first credit scene is a bunch of bloopers or exclusive B-roll or post-credit scenes or whatever? That's what this song is. This song is the final reminder to do what you love doing, staying true to your journey and not letting anybody steer you away from your journey. This track has an excerpt from Alan Watts' speech where he's basically saying to do the things that you want to do for the love of the game, not the money. Because if you do it for the money, it's essentially just a regular job. It's a regular 9 to 5, and those become mundane. Do it because you actually love doing it. So one day it can become a thing that earns money. For example, it's like how Logic went from rapping to nobody and for free to rapping for millions and making millions as well. What's crazy is that I actually used this song as part of my graduation photos on Instagram. So this song has a lot more meaning to me than the other tracks on this album. And as the track ends, it is Kai and Quentin preparing to land the paradise and discussing why they love Logic so much. And, you know, considering the fact that Logic wrote that whole script, he's basically self-glazing himself. But hey, bro, I'ma let you rock. And that is the incredible true story by Logic. There is a reason why this album is so neck and neck with Under Pressure. Because honestly, the quality for each of these are just so good. I think today though, what gives it the edge for me, not only because of its replay value, how I can go back to it at any point in time, but because I relate to it so much more now than I ever did. Because I am right on that line of knowing what I want to do, understanding what it takes to go do it, and actually going to go do it, knowing that there's going to be everything and everyone standing in my path telling me or showing me, don't do it, fall for this, fall for that, go for this, go for that. And me listening to my gut and my intuition and staying on my journey. And honestly, I think that's why a lot of the fans actually love this album. Not only because of its nerdy spaciness, but because it just is honestly super relatable to everybody, because everybody's gonna have to go through this, whether you're 16, 17 and you're going through high school and college, or you're coming out of college and you really don't know what to do in life, but you know that there's one thing that you always love doing, but your parents might not think is the best option for you. I think that's why everybody loves this project that's heard it. And for me, it definitely deserves its platinum certification that it's received. It definitely deserved to sell over 135,000 first week. It definitely deserved to be placed at number 3 on the Billboard charts. Cause honestly, I can't think of another rapper that was doing the space cutscene storyline thing that he was honestly going for on this project, and I would say tackled pretty well. Especially because he made it an ongoing storyline, continuing from, I believe, going as far back to his old mixtapes, to Under Pressure, to this, to, you know, Everybody, and so forth and so on. Until we reach Ultra 85, which I reacted to on this channel, by the way. Now, to be fair though, and to stop glazing and to be objective just for a little bit, I will say, retrospectively speaking, my only real critique on this album was that it would begin the trend of, hey guys, look at me, I'm so hood, I'm still black, I'm still this, I'm still that. Hip hop, please love me. Black community, please love me. I got these roots, I got these things, I got all of this. And that trend would only get worse and worse, because then he would start naming people that co-signed him, like, I got love from Drake and Jay-Z and Kendrick Lamar and J. Cole. I got love from this community and that community. I don't need all of this, but guys, I still need your acceptance. But guys, I don't need your acceptance. I don't need this. You don't need people's acceptance. Don't listen to me. And ultimately, it will be something that he still talks about on Ultra 85, but it seems a little bit more mature, because he would say, hey, look, you know, as somebody that struggled with acceptance, please don't be like me. Because here's the thing, right? If we take the time period in a vacuum from 2014 to 2015 or 2016, Under Pressure was the album that was basically the intro to the world, or your intro to the world. So it makes sense for you to tell your story, because at the end of the day, you have to seem like an actual human being, especially if you wanted to be the rapper that Logic wanted to be at the time. Kendrick Lamar and J. Cole were paving the way for every rapper in that tier or in that field on how to approach making music in that way. So it only made sense for Logic to come out with his debut project sounding eerily similar to Good Kid, Mad City. But the problem is that after that, it kind of becomes redundant, because if you keep talking about, you know, where your life is, where your journey is off of this newfound success, off of this newfound fame, well, yes, it is you kind of updating us on where your current mental state is. it eventually all just becomes the same. Oh, you got more money now. Oh, you have higher expectations now. Oh, you got more girls now. Oh, you have more materialistic things now. Oh, there's so many people coming after you. It gets to a certain point where you're just saying the exact same thing over and over again. And the incredible true story isn't too far away from Under Pressure in terms of the actual subject matter, especially when you consider that it would be an ongoing trend for the rest of his career. And as somebody that loves Logic to death, it would also become annoying to me as well. But as a standalone project, probably a top 3 album that came out that year. It's absolutely phenomenal. And like I said, as a standalone project, and some of the standalone songs, they still hold up, because if you just take them for what they are in that time period, it's like, all right, this is cool. But again, once it becomes an ongoing thing, I think I get the point that I'm trying to make. But at the end of the day, with all the negativity, with all the positive things that I've said about this project, I still absolutely love it. And I love it so much so that I'm still searching for the vinyl of this project, to the point where I don't even know if a vinyl ever existed. So if you actually have a vinyl of this project, please DM me, because I'm tired of searching and I really want one so bad. Okay, thanks, bye.